everyone for coming. We appreciate it. And we're hoping that this presentation will give you the information that you need to make a vote for on these, the town meeting article and the ballot questions that are associated with the Marshall Park project. So I'm Anita Shepard. I'm the chair of the Parks Commission, and I'd like to introduce the other members that are present today with me. We have Colleen Shapiro, who is the vice chair. We have Karen Menard, who is our clerk. And we have regular members Chris Sullivan and Tim Lawless. So let's jump into this presentation. Next slide, please. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is the following. Why Marshall Park? We've had people ask, why are we doing work on Marshall Park as compared to other parks that we have in town? So we're going to cover that. Then, what do we actually get out of this project? We're going to go into what we feel are the deliverables that will be an outcome if this project moves ahead. We're going to talk about the scope of the project, what it costs, and how we propose that it gets paid for. And we're going to be, as we say, dotting our I's and crossing our T's. We're going to do our due diligence in terms of grants. So we're going to be discussing what grant opportunities are out there. And we're going to also be going over park maintenance costs. We've had questions about that, legitimate concerns that people have in town. So we'll be discussing park maintenance costs as well. And then we'll have time at the end of the presentation for some questions that people might have. So next, please. Okay, so why Marshall Park? Our current open space and recreation plan actually addressed Marshall Park. It identified it as not meeting the needs for our community. It specifically says that the town should establish have a goal of enhancing and promoting existing open space and recreational assets, and specific to Marshall Park. And the objective associated with that goal is to, through a master plan, do restoration and enhancement of key recreation resources. The specific language in that plan says, Marshall Park. This resource was once the centerpiece of Lunenburg's recreation and civic activities. Today, it mostly serves as baseball and softball fields for a limited portion of our population and only for a portion of the year. Thoughtful and coordinated revitalization of this unique resource could meet many identified town needs. A master plan should be developed to guide the revitalization of Marshall Park to maximize its use. So this master plan was obviously a task that was assigned to the Parks Commission, and the vision established a goal to build a park that meets today's needs, inspires tomorrow's possibilities, and honors the rich history of the town. To be a shared outdoor space connected with nature, history, and our town's identity, where Lunenburg residents of all ages and all abilities come together for fun, fitness, and community. And to have it be a community space that delivers the most value for the most residents, supports our schools and youth athletics while fostering friendships, new connections, good health, and good times. So this next few slides, we're going to talk about existing conditions. I'm going to turn this over to Karen Menard.
Okay, so Marshall Park in its current state has three main fields. We have a softball field, we have a 90-foot diamond, which is the field off of Chestnut Street, and we have Powell Field, which is the field that the youth baseball players use. And to highlight some of why we feel this park is really ready for some improvements. We have older structures that are in desperate need of renovation or demolition because of the age and condition, including the storage building, which is on the left. That's located behind the softball field. Our playground was built more than 30 years ago. It's outdated and no longer deemed safe by today's standards, and it is absolutely not ADA compliant. And our parking lot off of Mass Ave has limited spaces. It lacks marked parking spots, has no ADA handicap parking. And on Chestnut Street, on the other side of the park, that has a small area for some pull-off parking, but once that's full, the on-street parking causes road congestion and concerns over public safety access to that park. The next slide. So this is the 90-foot diamond. The 90-foot diamond is used primarily right now by our high school, varsity and JV baseball teams. There's poor drainage on that field, which is impacting the schedule of use by that school, as well as anybody in our community that wants to use that. Having properly drained fields will allow these teams to play their full season, which in the spring goes from April 1st to about Memorial Day. The thing to understand on this field is that improved maintenance isn't going to solve the problems with our poor drainage. This field has a tremendous amount of water underneath it, so in order to improve this field, it actually has to be built up. That stormwater has to have some place to go. That stormwater would actually go, with this plan, would go towards the Mass Ave side for proper stormwater drainage. There's been no major renovations to this field in over 25 years, or to the park in general in 25 years. And Powell Field, which is the newest improvement to that field, or this park, was built by donations and volunteers back in 2000, and the softball field was converted to a softball field from a youth baseball field in early to mid 2000s.
Okay, so getting to what is it that we expect to be a deliverable from this project. So we're going to just quickly go over the specific benefits that we feel will be an outcome of a successful project. We're going to do a comparison of the master plan that had been developed with the funding scope design that we're proposing to bring forward at town meeting. We'll also be reviewing the design itself and talk about some project phasing. And then we're going to do a brief project background for those who need some refresher in terms of the history of it all. Okay, so the specific benefits. This is what we've identified as we want to have as outcomes for this project, and we feel very strongly that the design that's been put forward will address these. So the first one is strengthening the schools. The renovation of Marshall Park is going to provide upgraded baseball and softball fields with improved facilities for the middle and high school students. So we're going to rebuild those fields. The baseball diamond, the 90-foot diamond, and the softball field will be providing bathroom facilities. We'll be providing parking on both Chestnut Street and on the Mass Ave side of the park. And we'll be providing the pavilion, which will provide respite from weather, or we'll also be providing amenities for those people who come to watch the games. And similarly, support youth sports. While we're not touching the Powell Field, Little League Field as we call it, during this particular phase, it's in good shape right now, we will be providing the parking, the bathroom facilities, the concession stand. So those also support the youth leagues as well as the school leagues. Excuse me. Maximum financial impact. So this park is going to create a multi-generational space. It's going to be for people of all ages. It's going to be a multi-use space, and this will all be provided with this one investment for this project. It's going to benefit all ages, all abilities, and it's going to provide a variety of activities that currently do not exist at Marshall Park. Supporting senior health. We're going to have safe walking paths. There'll be smooth walking paths for low-impact exercise for our seniors. We're going to have ADA parking and accessible restrooms. A place for young families. We're going to have an inclusive space featuring a universally accessible playground. There'll be the picnic area, all this fostering outdoor fun and community connection for young families. And then community at large. There'll be space for community activities with the pavilion and other open spaces. There'll be the pickleball court, the basketball court, and there'll be that off-street walking paths for everyone. Next, please. Okay, so the master plan design. This was created by a firm called Wola out in Western Massachusetts, and they did a series of different public feedback sessions. And from all of that, the surveys, etc., that were completed, they put together a master plan that addressed all the things that the town was looking for in improved Marshall Park. Improved parking on Chestnut Street. Improved parking off of Mass Ave, including a designated pedestrian access entrance, a basketball court, 3 pickleball courts, a pavilion area for concessions and shelter, new restroom facilities, an accessible playground, new 90-foot diamond and a new softball field, walking paths throughout the park, a dog park, and connection of the main park area to Marshall Pond via a path that would lead to an overlook on the southwest side of the pond. And in addition, at Marshall Pond, there would be a small parking area, picnic area, and a pond overlook. So these are the items that were in the master plan that was developed. But what we're proposing for town meeting at this time is a modified design, a design that does not include all of that. It's only going to provide new amenities within the existing developed areas of Marshall Park. So the scope for the design and development was, funding was reduced from that full master plan concept to what we're proposing now, because when we looked at the estimated project cost for the full project, it was just exorbitant, and it was not something that we felt the town could support. So the dog park, the wetland trails, and the other improvements that previously had been proposed around Marshall Park are not included in this design. As I mentioned before, we're only working within the existing areas that have already been developed in Marshall Park. But the master plan design is still there and allows for those other areas surrounding Marshall Pond to be developed later, to be designed and funded when the town is ready. Okay, at this point I'm going to introduce Ray Dunitz, who is the principal designer for the firm RDLA, our landscape architect, and Tom Doolittle, who is our owner's project manager from Skanska.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm Ray Dunitz. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So Anita gave a good summary about the genesis of the funding scope proposal that we're sharing with you tonight, and talking about some of the things that will be done in the future, hopefully. But I want to point out that this red dashed line here is the limit of our work, and I can go through just a few of the highlights. A new entrance, or an improved entrance where the existing entrance is on Mass Ave. A parking area here which I believe has about capacity of 70 cars with 3 or 4 handicap parking spaces or accessible parking spaces. So you would drive in here, park. There would be in this location here, new restrooms and concession stand with a picnic shelter. The playground here, which Anita described as universally accessible and inclusive, which means kids of all abilities and ages can play there. New basketball court and pickleball courts overlooking the Powell Field. As part of a separate funded project, there will be a skate park here, which I believe is moving forward. It's going to be constructed this summer. So we've worked with the engineer, Greg Roy, on that project to coordinate incorporate all of our accessible walks throughout and drainage. There will be some green infrastructure capturing all the runoff from the fields into sort of a man-made wetland. Here will be the softball field. We have more restrooms here, dugouts, improved dugouts, regulation size field. And this is the location of the 90-foot baseball field. We've changed the design a little bit from the previous design, removed some of the angles and whatnot to make it a little bit more easier to maintain and playable. There will be a loop path all the way around the park, which will be accessible with benches and places to sit and reflect. We have, as some of you may know, we do have some memorials and flag poles and that kind of thing, which will be located near the entrance to the park. As we go up here, as Anita mentioned, we have a new parking lot, which will accommodate 40 cars, which will get them off of Chestnut Street and into the park, and accessible walkways from that parking lot down to the fields and the loop path. Am I missing anything? Nope. Okay, next please. Construction costs. Okay, so I think this is you.
No,
This is still me, okay. So we've looked at a couple of breaking this up if we couldn't get the full funding for the project into two areas. This is area one, where we would build the parking lot and the access road into the park. I did forget to mention that this will all be lit for safety. And this would get folks to park to the new skate park, playground, and courts. This is the first implementation area. We will build all of the drainage infrastructure in this first phase for the whole park, and the accessible pathways to these features. Next, please. Implementation area 2A in the light green color would be the fields. We would reorient both fields to a more ideal solar orientation. The softball field would be the lower part of the green area. They'll have spectators, seating, bleachers, accessibility regulations, and emergency access for first responders. The new parking lot up on Chestnut Street, which I mentioned before, with universal access to the ball fields, and it will address all the emergency access concerns at Chestnut Street and those neighbors there. Next, please. And then finally, area 2B would be the two buildings, which provide accessible restrooms, a new shade pavilion, and then water, sewer, septic, electric, and security infrastructure. So this is the concession building combination with restrooms and the picnic shelter, and that one up there, 2B, is, I'm sorry, that 2B. The one up towards the softball field is a restroom building. Next, please. This park history.
Okay, so this is just a quick slide to go over. For those who are not aware, the land for Marshall Park was acquired in 1913, and over the years the town has set the Parks Commission to be responsible for the care, custody, and control of this park, as well as the other parks in town. And as I mentioned before, for the past decades, the use of Marshall Park has been focused on baseball and softball by high school athletes, youth ball leagues, and community adult leagues. Okay. So a background as to all the things that we've done to get us where we are today for this project. So in May of 2021, town meeting appropriated $50,000 for the Marshall Park Master Plan. In January, or I should say early 2022, the landscape architect firm WOLA conducted public meetings, surveys, and obtained community feedback that they needed to develop that master plan that we talked about in the earlier slides. In November of 22, town meeting approved an additional $184,000 for the master plan schematic design. It took the master plan and took it to a bit higher level of detail so that people could really see what it would look like. In January of 23, the selectmen voted $1 million of ARPA funds for the project, showing an additional vote of confidence for the project. So in June of 23, we received that schematic design package from WOLA to the Parks Commission. In spring of 24, we hired the owner's project manager, Tom Doolittle from Skanska, and we hired the design firm, RDLA, with Ray Dunitz. In fall of 24, an updated cost estimate based on that schematic design revealed that the master plan construction costs were just prohibitive due to rising construction costs. So we went back to the table again, and in December 2024 through March of this year, we put together a new strategy and a new design scope that would create a smaller project than what the full master plan called for, but we felt that it aligned with the feasibility of what the town could afford, and it does meet most of the master plan goals. So now we're facing May, and town meeting and town election votes are needed to approve the funding for this project, for our selected scope of the master plan. Okay, so what does the project cost and how are we going to pay for it? So we're going to talk about the construction cost for the proposed scope. We're going to talk about how we propose to fund it, and we're going to talk about the estimated tax impacts. Okay, so for the proposed construction scope, the costs. Any construction cost has what you call soft costs and hard costs. Soft costs typically include things like the design fees, the cost of hiring the state-required owner's project manager, and excuse me, other services such as permitting, additional insurances that would be required, utilities, testing, and the clerical assistance that's needed to maintain this project throughout construction. So the soft cost totaled $807,531. But because we want to make sure that we're being conservative and have adequate funds to cover this, excuse me, we are adding an additional 5%. So the soft cost totals are $847,908. Okay, so now we're going to jump to the hard cost. These are the actual costs related to construction of the project. So the direct trade costs, that's the actual labor, materials, etc. that go into constructing the park. We have general contractor costs, such as general conditions. The contractor is also obligated to have their own insurance and bonds during the construction. And we have escalation. Escalation is an additional factor of funds that we add to the project so that we know that even if some costs for materials, etc. might increase during the period of construction, we will have that extra money there to cover the cost of those materials. It's a case of looking at what the project might cost us today and adding an additional 3.6% to that cost, so we have that extra money available to cover additional costs. So then we also have a design contingency that we're adding on. That's important because if we run into unforeseen conditions on the site, say there's a lot of ledge or something like that we find, we have money to help with the redesign cost of deciding what needs to go where and the specific details that the contractor would need to do the work associated with the change of plan. So the construction costs would be $12,273,775. But yet again, because we're being conservative, we're going to add a contingency on these hard costs of 5%. So that brings the hard cost total to $12,887,464. So what we do is we add the soft costs to the hard costs, and that brings us to a total project cost of $13,735,372. So for funding, as I just said, $13,735,372. Based on feedback that we have from the Board of Selectmen in 2024, and in consultation with both the current and previous town managers, the Parks Commission decided to propose this to be a debt exclusion borrowing to cover the construction costs of the project. A debt exclusion borrowing means that it's borrowing that's going to happen outside of the normal town budget, outside of the Proposition 2.5 levy that we always hear a lot of information about. But in order to get a debt exclusion borrowing approved, it's a two-part process. We need a 2/3 vote at the town meeting on that warrant article. And I think at this point it's article number 28, or at least the last version of the warrant I saw. I think it's 28. And then we also need a majority vote to approve the ballot question at the town election. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of impact to individual homeowners? So we're assuming we're going to do an 18-year borrowing. We developed that assumption with the help of the town's finance director, town manager, and the town's bond counsel. They took a long, hard look at what is going to be put into this park. They looked at the actual the park layout and the materials and facilities that are going to be constructed in the park, and determined that an 18-year borrowing was an appropriate period of time for this, based on useful life of the park and the facilities within the park. So they took that, and knowing the amount of money that we need to borrow over an 18-year period, they determined that it would add an additional 46 cents per thousand on a home's assessed value. So if you look at the average single-family house in Lunenburg, currently that estimated value of the average house is $504,937. So if you take that $504,000 and multiply it by the 46 cents, 0.46, it brings you an annual cost for that average home to $231 a year for that 18-year period. So with this proposed vote, the tax impact would begin once the payments start, and they would remain steady throughout the year until the loan's repaid. The first year during construction, that actual annual impact might be slightly under the 231, but on the whole, it will be $231 a year for that average household. Now, if you want to try to figure out what the cost would be for your own home, you would just take your tax bill and look at what the assessed value states on your tax bill. Take that amount and multiply it by the 0.46, and that will give you a good estimate as to what this project might cost you an extra amount on your tax bill for the 18 years of the borrowing. Okay, so in going on a little bit more detail, I'm going to ask Karen to talk about the next few slides.
My favorite topic, grants. So, as a Parks Commission as a whole, we were focused on finding as many grants as we could apply for over the past few years. Before we hit that bump in the road last fall of getting the new price estimate, we had actually applied for 4 grants. 2 of them we had received that we had to basically give back to the state because we weren't going to be able to meet their deadlines. And we also had to return some of the ARPA money because we also weren't going to be able to meet the deadlines now that we had to refocus and sort of figure out which direction we were going to go in. Can you do the next slide on that for me? Okay, so these are 3 of the 4 we had applied for. The Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, we had originally received $1 million in that. The park grant, which is the Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations grant, we had received $500,000. Both of those we were encouraged to reapply for when we had handed that money back, or they never gave us the money, but when we told them that we couldn't fulfill the requirements, they encouraged us to reapply. So we will absolutely reapply for these if the town decides to move forward. The ADA grants, the Municipal Americans with Disabilities Act, that is one we applied for. We did not get, but that is another one that we will plan on reapplying for. Next slide. The Mass Trails grant is one we had applied for that we did not get. I think the thing to note in this is because we changed the scope of the project, a lot of the areas that we had utilized to try to apply for that Mass Trails grant is not in the current scope. So because of that, we may have to look more closely to see if we have any projects that could qualify for that grant. If we do qualify, or we do find projects that would qualify, we would absolutely put that grant in again. We can also consider the T-Mobile Hometown Grant, the AARP Community Challenge, and the Mass MVP grants. If this project does move forward, we would tap into funding that's available by the town for professional grant writing services. We did have some help on the other ones. They were primarily organized and put together by me. For anybody that's ever done a grant, it is the most time-consuming thing I have ever dealt with. The number of hours we had in on that, so to have somebody who does them for a living would be a great service to us, but would also help to strengthen those grants that we didn't get. So, okay, next slide on that. This is just saying that we are committed to applying for as many grants as we find appropriate for the revised project, and that we would be utilizing the professional grant writing service. Okay, future park maintenance. Chris Roos is our facilities director. He's actually here, and he'll be available to answer questions at the end if anybody has any. He did develop a detailed maintenance plan for Marshall Park that includes both the current costs and our future costs. So the next slide on this is going to show what our current costs are. This is our current maintenance budget. I do want to point out here that while these are the numbers that are officially budgeted, the actual costs, especially for things like mowing, can be significantly higher. So Chris does the game of, or the dance of what I call the budget shuffle to try to cover any gaps that come up. So right now our total is $23,425,000, and that was put together by Chris. Next slide. The future maintenance of this park. This is what the budget is that we think we would need to properly care for this park. I'm going to say that what we have right now for funding in the budget for our current parks is not enough. We know that now. We've been saying it for years. Chris has been building up that budget to try to cover what we need to cover in that park. So there is a big jump, but part of it is because it's a new park, part of it's because we are underfunded to begin with. So using the current design plan and his ongoing conversations with our design team of Ray and Tom, he put together this future maintenance cost. And while some of these expenses may not be incurred every year, such as maintenance on the playground structure, we felt it was important to make sure that these were included to provide a complete picture of what a yearly maintenance cost could be in the worst case scenario. Back to Anita.
Thank you. I do want to just give a clarification. When we were talking about how individual homeowners could determine what the cost of the tax impact would be to themselves, you take the value stated on your tax bill and you divide it by 1,000. And then that number is what you multiply by the 0.46 to get you the potential tax impact, additional tax impact on your tax bill. So thank you, Chris, for reminding me of that clarification. Okay, so if we are successful in moving ahead with this project, if both the town meeting vote passes and the ballot question passes, this is what the schedule will look like for moving forward with the project. So right after town meeting and the town election occur, we would be jumping into developing the final details of the design package. And we would be starting to look at the permitting that's necessary for the project. Then the bid process itself, we have to go out to bid by state law. We would be preparing the bid documents starting in early October, and then the bid period itself would run from mid-October to early November, and we'd review the bids and award the bids between mid-November and early December. So as soon as that bid award is made, we would provide that chosen contractor with a notice to proceed in early December. That contractor then would automatically start looking at the materials that are necessary for the project, and they would submit proposed materials to us to get our okay and approval. Once they get that approval, they would start purchasing those items, and the site work, however, would not begin until March of 2026. We're hoping that the weather will cooperate and that we can get that contractor in there in early March of next year. The site construction for the project would run from that March of 2026 through roughly May of 27. Then the post-construction, there's always some wrap-up activity that needs to take place. The contract closeout would happen in July of 27. And then with the plantings that are required on the project, there's always a planting warranty that would last a year. So that planting warranty would go through May of 2028. Okay, so next steps. So as we discussed, this debt exclusion borrowing requires the 2 votes. It requires the vote at town meeting, which is Saturday, May 3rd, starting at 9 o'clock, and that's going to be at the middle high school auditorium. And then on May 17th are the town elections, and there will be that ballot question on the election ballot that would also need a majority vote of approval. So those are the 2 steps that we have to get through in order to get this project approved. Okay, so that's it for the project discussion, but we'd be glad to answer any questions that anyone might have. No questions?
How many acres does Marshall Park is it comprised of, and what is developed, what is being developed in this plan? Vis-a-vis the entire plan, plus parts are, I guess, not being developed at all.
Okay, well, the question was, what is the actual size of Marshall Park and what amount of that is actually going to be developed with this proposed project? So Marshall Park is roughly 27 acres. And Ray, I'm going to look to you to give me a percentage of the park. It's a little bit more than 50%, but I don't have an exact percentage.
Yeah, I don't have the exact area, but I would say 11.
And the baseball field, I think, is being reoriented from what is right now. I'm not really that familiar with the park itself, but it seems like on that diagram, it's being, I think that it's home plate is closer to Chestnut Street, and you're moving it away. Are you doing the same thing with the softball field? Is that being reoriented?
Yes. So the question was, are the fields being reoriented from what they are currently today? And the answer is yes.
So right now, the current field position of the 90-foot diamond is right here. It would be, this is the position of the current 90-foot diamond here. It would be shifted, and the new positioning would be down here. The softball fields, the current location of it is right in here. And again, that is also being shifted. That would allow some space down here for the playground. And I will point out on this, the way this is done is the playground, this part of it can be done without touching the fields if that's what the town decides.
I apologize for asking a lot of questions. You talked earlier about it, the property is primarily used on a seasonal basis. Seasonal being, I'm from the south, so I'm not used to the spring being so late, but the usage is really from March through October. In terms of in terms of the winter time, what do you foresee the usage being, if any? I think that you have the walking trails. Is there anything else you contemplate?
The question was, currently the use of the park is limited to the spring or early fall based on the use by the schools or community leagues. And even the spring period is affected because of the water retention issue we have on the 90-foot diamond currently. So the question went on to say, what do we anticipate that year-round use of the park would look like? And yes, it definitely is, you know, the inclusion of the walking trails that would be available, and the sports courts could also be used with clearing of the areas of the sports court that would, you know, whether it's the basketball or the pickleball courts, those could be cleared of snow if necessary to make them usable in, you know, during a longer season.
Well, I just talk loudly, but we're probably going to tarp over the 90-foot baseball diamond, so that will be the only thing that's sort of off limits, you know, to protect it from damage. But the playground can still be used, the parking can still be used if people are hardy enough to go out in winter.
So for those that couldn't hear that, what Ray Dunitz had said was that the playground also would be available year-round, you know, just to be cleared off, as to be used, and the parking facilities would be available. He also mentioned that it's anticipated that the diamond would be covered with a tarp during the winter seasons, so that it would maintain that field in good condition for longer use in the seasons. We're glad you came.
Well, I'm not from here, so I'm asking the questions that are probably not very sophisticated. I understand there's an area in the park that was developed by the Civilian Conservation Corps, probably in the 1930s, early 1940s. And I forget exactly what they were sort of...
It's a cave.
Yeah, I was
It's a
going to say
cave. Yep, it's a cave. So,
Is that going,
yep,
is that going to be demolished, or is it going to be...
it's not going to be touched. It's going to be, that is what the decision was, correct, right? We're leaving it alone. So, the location of it now is not something that I choose to point out because it's actually, in my opinion and many other people's opinions, it's not the safest cave system that we have going. The roof has collapsed down. The kids still find it and they still crawl their way into it, but this design here would not touch where that cave is. So if somebody down the road wanted to somehow preserve it, that would be an option to do down the road. What else you got? You've got some good ones. They're great. Marianne.
Okay.
Yep, no, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to the Parks Commission people who have been working on this for a long time. You know, your hours are certainly appreciated. I think as being in the neighborhood, literally, of Marshall Park, I see it used about 2-3 months, and then the rest of the time, really, there's no activity there. The fact that it could become something for everyone, for multi-generations, for the community to come together, when there's already so much divisiveness amongst us. Moms and dads and kids and seniors, I'm just really excited that this has the chance to become really a gem of Lunenburg for people to come together. With that being said, the parking also has become very, at least I know along Chestnut Street, where you're almost playing chicken during the time, the 2-3 months that it is used. Very dangerous, so I'm glad to see that that's been addressed. The question I have is, thinking ahead to construction and vocational schools, has that been a thought
Yes.
that perhaps there could be a win-win situation where vocational schools are also contributing and they're getting work experience and contributing to the community?
We discussed it with Tom and some of the design team. I think it was before Ray came on. It would be the expectation that some projects would be identified that could be submitted to the trade school for consideration. It does not mean that they would accept our project, but it's something that we can absolutely try for. I think that is part of the point of having a community park. The community is more than just the people in this town, it's the people outside of this town, including the students from this town that go to school outside of this town. So they've done projects in the past for Lunenburg before. I think their most recent one might have been the cemetery. I don't know if there was something else between then and now, but it's something that we will, you know, be asking the team to consider and what we can put forward to Monty Tech. DJ.
My last question. Why is it called Marshall Park?
You know what, I'm not 100% sure. I think it was the Marshalls that owned it. Am I?
I don't know the answer.
So I probably shouldn't be throwing that out there without knowing for sure. I believe that might have been the original owner of it. It's been known as Marshall Park since 1913. So I will look for you though and see what I can dig up for information. Because I'm sure there's somebody in town that does know, and primarily this person that moved out of town that still has all the history of this town. So we will go back to him and ask him for that. So, TJ?
Tim, do you mind going to the maintenance slide, just so I can talk through it?
The costs?
The
Breakdown?
the current maintenance cost.
The current?
Current,
That's future, go on.
yeah.
Yeah.
This one, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, current, right here.
So the current cost of maintenance is $23,000 for just Marshall Park. Is that what that means?
Yes,
Not including the other parks
Correct.
areas?
correct. And by park areas, you mean McNally, Fitzgerald, Veterans, and Wallace Park. Correct, it does not include that.
Gotcha. Could you go to the next slide, Tim? Sorry. Does this include any salaries? Does this new cost include any salaries that are needed? Will we need additional salaries to? Salaries we have covered.
So the question on this was if this slide included salaries, and the answer from our facilities director was that it doesn't because it's not needed. Salaries are not needed in this. All of our mowing is contracted out. And our bathroom cleaning, I don't see a long line of people making a line to clean our bathrooms, so that would also be contracted out, correct, Chris?
You have irrigation, maintenance, repairs, but you don't have a cost of water, I think.
The cost of water is included in my full budget, it just wouldn't fit on the slide. That's, the irrigation uses quite a bit of water. I think anyone that has irrigation in their house, but the irrigation water cost, currently all 3 fields are irrigated, so that water cost will likely stay fairly steady.
TJ, we do have a better copy for you up here. We anticipated your arrival, so we do have a better copy for you.
Donated to town by then farmer.
Yep, so it was donated, Marshall Park was donated to the town by a farmer with the last name of Marshall. Anyone else have any questions?
I got a question.
Sure.
Internet. Is that whole park gonna be wired, or is that?
Part of it is fixed for security cameras.
It's all security, it's the electronic locks for the doors and cameras.
Okay, so it's not public Wi-Fi.
I mean, it's an option, but it's, the main use is from security and
So the question was whether or not, what the internet line was for, and that, the answer to that, it would be for the door locks, which are now all automated, or going to soon be automated in this town, soon, and for our security cameras, so that we can have feeds, obviously for security of the park, and public Wi-Fi could be an option if we chose to do that. We're not there yet. DJ?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing scoreboards part of this project.
So the scoreboard at the 90-foot diamond would be carried over to the 90-foot diamond. What was the final on the scoreboard for the softball field?
We carry the cost to replace it.
So we carried a cost in the budget of the project to replace the scoreboard at the softball field. Were we doing one at the 90-foot too? I can't remember all the details. Okay, so the 90-foot would remain the classic memorial scoreboard that we have at the field right now. And then the softball field would have a new softball scoreboard.
We did plan with the 9-foot diamond to run a conduit over, so if ever needs to be upgraded, we don't have to dig up the park to run
It was also almost more cost effective to put in a new scoreboard than trying to reuse the old one.
Actually, I would want to put that one.
Yeah.
Another question, and anybody can ask questions. I guess this is for Chris. Is there going to be, does this maintenance plan include additional grass maintenance? Meaning, I don't think we seed or fertilize today.
So it includes additional maintenance. The big jump we're going to see is if you look at the current mowing costs, when it was bid out, it was bid at either 17 or 19 cuts a year, which is not even close. So that's kind of, right now, we rob Peter to pay Paul. If no one's playing and the weather doesn't cooperate, we save money on mowing and put it towards other maintenance. That being said, if you look at our costs here, let me go up there. No, if you look there,
Aaron's going to have to repeat everything you're saying.
I think I'm loud enough. If you look at fence maintenance, say the project gets built, I'm not going to spend a dime on fence maintenance on Marshall for the first 5 years because they're brand new. The thought is, my parks budget is a single line item. This is more of my worksheet of how I budget each year. So if I don't need to maintain the fences over here because there's no damage yet, I can take that money and apply it to different fields. Same thing during construction, there won't be anything to bump. So that gives me money available to invest in Nally or Fitzgerald during construction to bring some of those parks back up.
So I guess directly, is seeding and fertilizing built into this budget now?
Yes.
Directly?
Yep, the field's variable fertilized.
Gotcha.
And we have, if you look at our landscaping contract, I have unit prices for each field for aeration, thatching, overseeing, all those things. And we do that as an as-needed basis. If I had all the way in the world, we'd do it every year, but we all know that that's not our current situation.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Somebody must have something. Boys, you guys have a question? Doesn't matter how big or small it is. Any question?
You could be playing in these fields. What do you want to see?
Yeah.
We don't have anything else.
Thank you very much for coming, we appreciate it. We will be doing an additional presentation similar to this on Saturday, the 26th at 10 o'clock in the morning here for people who would like to come and be part of that one. We'll also be doing a version of the same presentation at the Selectmen's meeting on the 15th next week. So we're hoping that by televising this session and doing the others, that we'll get the information out to people that need it so that they can make an educated vote at town meeting and on the ballot question. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.